Welcome to another episode of Yoga Biz Champ. I am thrilled to have back with me today Jill Agonias. If you've listened to this podcast, she was on season 2, episode 5, where she talked about the struggles of buying a studio, not doing her due diligence, but then sorting everything out and making it rock. Well, struggles no more. This is a Yoga Biz Champ for sure. She recently sold her studio for 30% over asking price. She's super inspirational. I adore this young woman, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome to another episode of now named podcast Yoga Biz Champ, formerly Yoga Biz Camp, season 4. And I am thrilled to have a returning guest with me, Jill Agonias from season 2, when it was Yoga Biz Camp. Welcome, Jill.
Hey, Michael. So happy to be here. Thanks for
I
having me.
I am thrilled to have you here. I am not going to go through the whole introduction and your journey. I'm going to suggest, if you haven't listened to it, folks, Jill was on season 2, episode 5, and it was called Structure Equals Freedom, Seek Yoga. And in that episode, Jill goes through the entire somewhat traumatic journey of buying a yoga
Just a little
studio.
dramatic.
Going through all the traumas of buying a studio and facing everything. You really did have it from every front on that opening, and then figuring it out, easing it all, putting structure into place, and building the most beautiful, amazing studio in Santa Barbara. And I am thrilled because I don't get to meet all of my podcast guests. And we hung out at Mind Body Bold once, and I got to visit your amazing studio. And it is beautiful. But you recently sold it.
Yeah, I did. And it
Welcome.
was so fun hanging out with you, by the
Yeah.
way.
Super fun. And honestly, your studio, Soul Seek Yoga, downtown Santa Barbara, what an amazing. When I saw it, I was like, wow, there's not much parking around here. As far as all the things you look for in a studio, there's a lot of odds against it location wise, I think, but people made a massive effort to get to your studio space.
Absolutely. Actually, the parking is not as bad as you think. It just requires a little bit of education.
But it's tourist town though, right? So it's
It
very,
is.
yeah.
Yeah, very much tourist town,
Yeah.
very much in like the center of downtown Santa Barbara where all the tourists are walking by.
Yeah, but people that live there, they made the effort to downtown, not being on the
Mhm.
outskirts of town or anything like that. But it was a
Absolutely.
place that drew people and you created community.
Thank you. Yes, it was such a gem and still is a gem.
Still is
It
a gem.
still
Yeah, yeah,
exists, still
yeah.
has the
So
same name.
your LinkedIn post, which funnily enough, I actually shared your LinkedIn post with one of my studios, one of my clients this morning
Nice.
to show the possibilities. But here it is. I'm proud to announce that I sold my business in September 2023 with multiple offers closing at 30% over asking. Thank you from the bottom of my heart to everyone who supported me and Soul Seek Yoga Studio. Those 5 years were a wild ride. I started out wearing every hat, working 16 hours a day, and slowly grew an empowered team of 40 who ran the business with grace, even in my absence. Listen to that, folks. Together, we weathered the storm of a global pandemic, a full rebrand, and an epic renovation. Through it all, we became stronger, more organized, and more unified by our shared values. Small business heart, big business mindset. Truly, it was my greatest honor founding Soul Seek Yoga and growing it into a space loved by thousands in Santa Barbara and beyond. As I make the transition from wellness into real estate, I'm bringing with me the values of inclusivity and warmth that define my studio always. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to share what ventures are in store next. P.S. The new owners adopted the Soulseek brand at their 2 studios in Manhattan Beach. So now there are 3 Soulseek Yogas in the world. Make sure to check them out at soulseekyoga.com.
Yay.
How long did it take you to write that?
forever. And I wrote it. I didn't put it into chat GPT or anything.
That is super you, and I feel like every word was thought out.
Totally. Yeah. Actually, it took me 4 months to post
4 months.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, because you posted it recently, right?
Really recently, I think towards the beginning of this year, and I sold the studio September 2023.
Yeah, so I saw
Yeah.
the studio too. So I know that it's a feeling you gave birth to something and that it's like the legacy continues without
Totally.
you.
Yeah, I don't have children, so I don't know
Yeah,
from firsthand
yeah,
experience,
yeah.
but it is like having a baby and then
It-
letting your baby
yeah,
run off and be their own person and go to college.
yeah, you
That's what
nurtured
it
it
felt
into
like.
something, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, and I love that feeling because my studio is now in its 20th year
Wow.
and on its third owner. And
Nice.
I feel like my studio opened at that generation of when the studios just started opening. We were
Mm.
in basements before that.
Yeah. Or like DVDs and tapes.
Yes, yes. So how do you feel now having how does it feel you? There's been a bit of space between selling it and
Yeah, to be totally honest, when I first sold it, I had known for about a year or so that I was on the brink of potentially selling. And like you were saying, it's my baby, and I put my whole entire heart and soul into it. So the process to get from thinking about selling to actually reaching out to Mitch McGinley, the most amazing boutique fitness
Mitch.
broker out there.
Yeah, Mitch has been
um,
on a couple of my podcasts. Yeah.
yeah, he's the best.
Yeah.
It was like bittersweet to say the least. It was like breaking up with a significant other that you've been with
Yeah.
for a long time.
Well,
So
and they grieve you too, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. There was a lot of grieving, a lot of emotions at the studio, mostly positive, of course, because I was close with mostly everyone, and
Yeah.
they were very supportive of my transition. But there was a lot of heartbreak. Like it took me quite a few months to, and I think that's one of the reasons why it took me so long to post on LinkedIn, because
Yeah.
I was still going through that grieving and that letting go
Letting
process.
go.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and just like rediscovering who I was as a person, because my
Yeah.
identity was so wrapped up in the
Yeah.
studio. But now that a few months have gone by and I was able to take pretty much a couple months off of work, I feel so much lighter, so much more
Yeah.
empowered, and had a ton of time for reflection. And yeah, I feel really good right now.
Can you tell me why you chose to, because you've chosen to, I feel like I remember a post you wrote. I'm not sure if it was an Instagram post, but I feel like there was a post at some point where you said something about, I did as much as I could.
Yeah,
Did I see that or did I hear that somewhere?
totally.
Yeah.
To
And
again, to be totally honest, I almost felt like I reached a professional and personal ceiling at the studio.
yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and the next step in yoga studio ownership to scale is opening other yoga studios.
That was my so
Yeah.
I want to know why that decision, because you have a choice at that point, right? You've grown it to a point where it's profitable, its value is 30% eventually over asking. And so why was that decision to not expand or franchise?
Mhm.
You could have done that route, but what was your decision to not do that route?
So even before I started at the studio, or I guess right when I started at the studio, I told myself that I was going to give myself 4 years to figure out what my next step was going to be. I
Okay.
knew that I was either going to, the four options were either to close if for some reason the studio was not profitable,
Yeah.
to sell if the studio was profitable, but it was potentially taking up too much of my time, or maybe I wasn't enjoying it as much as I would have liked, or like in this situation, reached a ceiling. And then the third option would be to franchise, which at this stage of the studio, it didn't really seem that possible. We just weren't big enough and we didn't already have other locations. And then the fourth would be to open up additional locations.
Yeah.
And so I landed at that number two spot of selling, not because I didn't enjoy The studio, I loved the work, the people, everything. It was like almost my dream job, but I just didn't want to take that next step of opening up an additional yoga studio. It's super capital intensive.
Yeah.
The only caveat to that would have been if I could own the building
Right,
that we were
exactly.
going.
Yeah. Okay. So you had a team of 40, you've got it to this place, you've got systems, you've got marketing automations. Can you tell me? So, a lot of my young female studio owners, they get to this place, they've started it with passion, they're teachers, and then they get to a place and a little bit of overload, and so you put a structure in of, can you tell a new studio owner how to put a structure of a team in place that helps build your business? Where to start
Mhm.
with that?
Totally. Definitely listen to the other podcast episode that
Yeah.
we did because it'll
Yeah.
go into more detail.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a slow burn. I think a lot of it is you have to be patient. You have to find the right people. Finding the right people is probably one of the most important things. Someone that you trust, someone or people that you trust,
Yeah.
people that want to stick around and who are invested in
Yeah.
your mission and the yoga industry just in general,
Yeah.
and to document every single thing that you
Um,
do. And just know that it's going to change. And every time you change it, just update it. And that's one of the best ways to grow a team because then you can literally just hand new team members. Here is our standard operating procedure for this specific task. And as you start to grow your team bigger and bigger, it's so important because if you think about, we had one general manager and then myself, and the general manager really took care of most things. And so instead of 40 people calling her all at the same time, they know that they can just open up the manual for
yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
department they're in
Yeah.
and find the answer themselves.
So, can you tell me? All right, I just had this conversation honestly before we met today. SOPs we started because,
Mhm.
yeah, it's everything, right? And what you said there, you said something in there that it changes. You can update it, which is really important, that you can create procedures. But when something comes out up, like an instance where a lady in a studio, I got a text on the weekend, a lady in a studio screamed at somebody else in the middle of the room,
Oof.
right? And also a big whole drama over in one class. But to me, that's okay. Like, okay, what can we learn from this? First, we need
Mhm.
to support our teachers. And so, what structure are we going to put into the safety of the teachers? And so, all of this comes into, who do we contact? Who was in that class? Does that all ring?
Totally. A thing as you're starting to build your systems, and first of all, I feel like people are intimidated by the word systems and
Yeah.
standard operating procedures. It is literally just figuring out, writing down, and standardizing what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
It can be very simple, but yeah, when you start writing them, there are bound to be a bunch of things that you don't think of until they actually happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think like in that scenario specifically, it is good to just have a baseline for like how do we handle conflict?
Yeah.
How do we support the teachers? How do we support the students? And maybe it's not necessarily line by line. This is a
Yeah.
script, but this is the overall goal of what we're trying to
Yeah.
do. For us, it was diffuse the situation, have empathy for whoever is screaming things to help them calm down, and then go from there.
What is your SOP in? Are you printed out? Are you online? Are you Google? Where is your SOP?
Google Docs for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes we print stuff out, especially things that usually don't change that often, but to have the flexibility in Google Docs to be able to edit and for everyone to see real-time updates is super valuable.
Yeah. Thank you.
But what we did too, just
Yeah. Yeah.
as a side note, is we would have an announcement updates sheet, like Google Doc, that we would update as time goes on. And if there are ever any changes to the SOPs, we would use that update doc to let people know, hey, this has changed. And then everybody initials next to the
Okay.
thing that changed. So then everyone's still consistently updated.
Yeah. I love it. And everybody listen. I think on the last podcast episode, you spoke about your training was all in your marketing automations and you put everybody into a funnel. And did that get any bigger?
Oh my gosh. I can go into marketing funnels for
I
forever.
think maybe we need to do
Um,
another podcast.
yeah, they consistently grow. And what was really important for us and what our marketing manager, Taylor, did really was in our yearly calendar, we would schedule in audits. So it's really easy to get overwhelmed by how many automations there are, but it's also super important to make sure that you're spending the time to update
Right.
them like regularly, because
Yeah.
maybe your voice changes, maybe a rule at your studio changes, maybe price changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was you and your manager, and then with the teaching, who oversaw the teaching team? Was that you?
Our general manager did.
The
I
general
did
manager.
for quite a while, but the last
Yeah.
year or so she did.
And then front desk was general manager as well.
Yes, she
So
was. Sierra was just a rock star.
you just found that, so you just found that magic one person that could do all of that stuff.
She is literally magical.
Yeah. Well, because those people are out there, right? It's like even with the when I have new studio owners going through those learning phases of hiring, and when that
Mm,
that person just not fitting in, I'm like, there are other people that will fit in and be part of your team and want to be part of your team.
absolutely. Yeah. You just have to put it out there and show people that you're hiring. And I actually recruited Sierra. She was a teacher at the studio, and I don't know exactly what it was, but I just saw something in her and I asked
Yeah.
her, do you want to be more a part of the business and start doing some admin and social media work? Was how it started, which is so funny because she like hates social media. And then that eventually evolved into something deeper. I think if Sierra is an anomaly, I think what most studios probably do is have a general manager who does operations, front desk team, sales,
Yeah.
and then a teacher manager, and
Yeah.
then a marketing manager.
Yeah. Yeah. But you found that all encompassing person that could do it all.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, she's magic.
So you said that in the process that you got to that place where you capped yourself. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So, disclaimer, I have ADHD.
Oh, you know
So,
what? Me too. And I honestly think almost so many people in our world do. And a lot of my studio owners
mhm,
do too.
absolutely. And I think
Superpower too,
that's
though.
totally, I think that's definitely one of our superpowers. I think it's also one thing that after you do something a certain amount of time, it just becomes a little less exciting, especially because for me, I spent 4 or 5 years just hyper focused
Yeah.
on this
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And
I,
so,
I
but
love that
my
mode, by the way.
yeah, oh my gosh, that's the
Yeah,
superpower
it
part of
is.
it.
It is.
I have to like rein
But
it
trying to
in
find your
though.
keys might be another thing.
Totally. I don't know where anything else is ever. It took me like 10 minutes to find the AirPods for this podcast. But what was the question again?
Oh,
There's that ADHD
the
popping
ceiling,
in.
ceiling.
Okay, the ceiling, yes. So, yeah, it's after a certain point, I feel like repeating things just got repetitive for me. And I felt, of course, there's definitely a lot more to continue to learn and grow, but I felt like, where can I find that? Where can I find that mentorship? Where can I find that growth? And I had been part of some really amazing mastermind groups and whatnot. But yeah, for this is just me personally. I don't think this is
Yeah.
necessarily like the yoga business in general, but I was just feeling like slightly starved in a way. Like I wasn't getting the nourishment that I needed. Yeah. And also financially, our studio was packed. We
And
had
post COVID too.
post
Yeah.
COVID, yeah, we were
People came
packed.
back. Yeah.
They came back, and
Yeah.
maybe our morning classes weren't that great, but like our bread and butter classes were the evening, and they were so full. People were canceling their memberships because they were like, it's too crowded. I don't being in such a hot, sweaty room with so many people. We feel like we're packed like sardines. And that was a big wake up call for me to think, Okay, this is the amount of real estate that I have inside my
Re-
studio.
yoga mats are real estate, right? That's all you got.
Totally.
That's all you
The
have.
space is, yeah, and that's it. And I was just thinking that's when it clicked for me. Like the next step is to open up another yoga studio, or to increase the prices, which we had already increased the prices a bunch, or to find a different space in Santa Barbara. And I still had a bunch of years on my lease, and
Right.
the capital to renovate another space just felt like it didn't make any sense. So yeah, I hit my personal ceiling, and then at the studio itself, we just didn't have that much more room to necessarily grow.
Yeah. And so what was the step that you took? So I imagine Mitch is part of that. And so can you tell me about that kind of moment where you decided to take that step?
Yeah, so I've known Mitch for a few years now. I actually reached out to him during the pandemic when I thought,
He helped you through your roughest stage,
oh
just as
my
being
gosh,
there for you, right?
Mitch was my guardian angel
Yeah.
throughout the pandemic. And we were not able to sell the yoga studio during the pandemic for obvious reasons. We got one offer, which was just like so much of a low ball. I just couldn't take it. And so I told Mitch during the pandemic, I'm like, I'm not going to sell right now. Maybe I'll sell in a few years. We'll see how it goes. What can I do to prepare my studio to sell in a few
Right,
years?
right.
And the main things that he said were net profit is the most
Profit.
important,
Yeah.
not your gross profit, but your net. So, like how much money you're actually keeping, and then your systems, and just making sure that the studio can run without you. So, those were the things that I focused on for the next couple of years, thinking that there could be a potential to sell. But even if I didn't sell, those are just great business strategies to begin with. So,
Take a
yes,
note there, everybody listening.
totally.
Yeah.
That is the foundation of a business right there. And
And if
for
you're
me, as
opening a new studio, start right away.
absolutely, there's no reason to
Yeah.
think otherwise. You need to be making money. You need to start building your business. And when you start to build the systems, then you eventually no longer have to necessarily work in the business. You are just
On.
working on the
Yeah.
business. So yes, when I decided that it was time to sell, I reached out to Mitch again and was like, okay, let's get the party started. And he's the master. Because I had a little bit of experience with trying to sell my business before, I already
Yeah.
knew exactly what I needed to give him, which was,
Yeah. Did you
yeah,
find it? Because I found I didn't do it with a business I did it all by myself.
yeah, that's a lot of
And
work.
it was, for me, it was a very invasive process, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
you just get everything gets dug into because they're doing their due diligence, right? The buyers. And so
Absolutely.
it's a yes, okay, we're going to get another report for you. But I'm sure Mitch can make that easier than what I went through.
Totally. And I am extremely organized. So getting that stuff was just like so easy. And yeah, he makes it really easy. I think one of the biggest benefits of working with a broker is that you can still work. It doesn't take away from the time that you're still working on your own business. So he handles a lot of
Yeah,
the
you're not doing the direct
initial,
contact and
yeah, like we had a ton of interest too. And it was really nice to have Mitch to talk to all the potential leads, Mitch and his team. He has a
yeah,
really great team as well, to talk to everyone instead of me having to talk to them. Also, because as a yoga studio owner myself, there's a lot of emotion in it.
yeah.
And so it's really nice to have a broker to be the middleman and to help. One, he was like a therapist, to be totally honest. And then two, for him to deal with a lot of the stuff so that I didn't have to.
The negotiations and
Yes,
the
although
little
I
details.
loved the negotiations. I was like very
Did
much a
you?
part of the back end strategy for
Uh,
those.
so so which is probably really helping you now as you're in real estate.
Oh, totally. Yeah. But I've always loved negotiating.
Can you, before we get to the sell part, I want to go back a little bit to when you first started, and you've learned so much along the way. You've literally taken this to as far as you could have taken it. And what would you say to those young studio owners that were like you back then, they are buying a studio and there's all those learning curves that get thrown about out at you. I think I help mitigate a lot of that by helping put structure up front and onboarding
Mhm.
manuals and things like that. But not everybody has a coach at the beginning. And so what I'm noticing a lot is these wonderful, passionate young women are by opening these studios and then having a hard time standing firmly in their own two bare feet in their studio and finding this confidence to say it's okay that I have to let a class go. It's okay that this teacher doesn't fit into our vibe. It's okay for me. It's just there's just that confidence to say it's okay to be firm, fair, but have expectations. I feel like you are the person to say to them.
Yeah,
it's it takes a lot, right?
it is a lot. Entrepreneurship is a lot. And I think as people who are coming from a place really deep within our heart, we feel emotions a lot heavier than perhaps other people do. And we usually tend to put other people before ourselves. And I think that's an amazing quality, actually. And I don't think that you necessarily need to repress any of that. I think over time, things do start to get easier. Those hard decisions that you think were hard a year ago, 1 year later, feel like
Practice.
a little blip. And I think for me, what I really struggled with in my yoga studio, especially when it was struggling, was my own self worth.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that I feel like a lot of people can identify with that. And there's this one quote, I have no idea who said it, but it's always been sticking with me. You deserve to love yourself for all you are, not just the best version of you. And I think that when we're going through hard moments as entrepreneurs, we have to somewhat separate ourselves, not completely, just compartmentalize. Here's your
Protect.
business self, yes, and then here is your personal self,
Yeah.
and take care of you however you need to, but then also take care of the business however you need to, whatever is best for the business. There's definitely that balancing act that
Yeah.
eventually, I promise, gets easier over
Yeah.
time.
And I feel like some of the clients I work with, especially when you've got things like ADHD, and if something knocks you off that,
Mhm.
right, you can get on this, I don't know about you, but you can get on a loop train in there,
Oh,
right?
yes.
And it can knock people out for 2 or 3 days. But it is that thing. It can mentally knock you out, but we still have to have the business. Like intro offers still need to be sold and classes still need to be
Hmm.
taught and subbed. Can you talk about that? I don't know if you resonate with that, but it's something.
Totally. I think that burnout is a huge problem in our society, and especially as entrepreneurs. And when you get knocked off, like you were just saying, it's really hard to get back up. And I think again, that's where the compartmentalization can happen. And for
Yeah.
me, one strategy that I would do was I would let myself sulk and give myself like a time limit and be like, okay, Jill,
Yeah,
now's
yeah,
the
yeah,
time. Like, go
yeah.
ahead, cry your eyes out, scream into a pillow, do whatever you need to do. And then at 12 o'clock, let's get back on that horse. And then be like, okay, from 12 to 3, I'm like really in work. And then after 3, it just, you can let it go to shit again.
But yeah, but you're giving yourself permission to go down, right?
Absolutely. You
Yeah, and
have to. If you
yeah,
continue to
yeah,
suppress and suppress, then one day you're just going to explode. And actually, I did that. I was like, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm just going to be resilient and I'm going to keep going no matter what. And then I crashed for a long time and I fell into a pretty deep depression, to be honest. And then, yeah, and then I realized that you have to have that balance. You have to let
yeah.
yourself cry, sulk, feel your feelings, and then you also have to give yourself permission to try again.
And we lose our practice too. It's very,
Oh,
very common with, I
absolutely.
think, with studio owners that are over teaching,
Mhm.
over teaching, and I think we lose why we started it.
Mhm.
Conversation this morning was with one of my clients is, you need to go to one of your classes.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. I think, and then I feel like then the spiral is we feel like
Because
imposters.
then we're just
We
all
start
about the
to have,
business. This we're
mhm.
just all about the business. All right, so we need to move forward here, but because that's honestly that's so amazing though, like you've given those insights, because it's just raw, it's honest, and it's, I would say, 50% of the people I'm talking to is are feeling these things.
Totally. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but you, anyway, you've now got this business, you've maxed what you can do with it and yourself, and you've reached out to Mitch, you've gone through this process, and
Mhm.
then the perfect buyers have been found. Can you talk about
Yeah, we had quite a few people interested in the business, which was great.
you feel good?
Oh my gosh, like extreme validation right there, which is, yeah, that felt really good. And it feels good to talk about. But yeah, the people who eventually ended up buying the business are this couple, Justin and Greg, who I've known just through the yoga world the last couple of years. And I actually reached out to them. I've been prepping them for a long time, though.
Oh,
I don't know if that's
really?
kind of creepy and weird, but yeah,
You
they
would
came. I
ideal
have just
this?
been planting the seed and
Really?
planting the seed.
Well, so you had a gut feeling they were the right
I
one.
had a gut feeling, yeah. I think like part of it was our personalities just clicked. Actually, Justin, we have the same birthday, and I don't know, that studio. Yeah, he has the studios down there. And they came up to Santa Barbara during the pandemic, actually, when we were still outside, and I was in the middle of demoing the our studio space. And I remember them walking into the studio when it was like a total mess and being like, oh my God, it's beautiful. I'm like, oh. So they had already loved the studio and took a couple of classes with us, and we stayed in touch. So a few months before listing the studio, I actually poked Justin, reached out to him on Instagram and was like, hey, just I'm probably gonna list my studio for sale in March or April. And he
Yeah.
was like, great, keep me
You're pre-seeding.
updated. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Cause sometimes it takes a long time for someone to commit to buying a business. And so planting the seeds there with him was very strategic and obviously worked to my favor. Yeah. And then we had a couple of other people who were interested as well, people who found us just through Biz Buy Sell,
Yep.
which is a great platform. And then one person who had a franchise who wanted to rebrand to their franchise, which I wasn't very much into. And then another very sweet couple who used to live in Santa Barbara. And eventually, when it came down to it, we had two final remaining parties who were interested, and we went into very fun negotiation. And yeah, eventually landed on Justin and Greg, which I'm very happy about. It would have been, the other people would have been amazing too, but ultimately super
Was
happy with
it
who we had.
was it important that you got that it was the right people? Because it was for
Oh
me.
my God, so
Yeah.
important. Like
Yeah.
again, a yoga business is, it's not, I don't know, like a laundromat. It
Yeah.
is our souls manifested into a space and into a community, and finding the right people to care about it and nurture it and continue to grow it was like the most important.
Yeah, for me too. I've told this story a few times, but when one person came into my studio and she was primed to buy it, but she had, I think her other studio was a faith-based studio. So she walked in and we had a very prominent 220-pound, beautiful concrete Buddha on a beautiful handmade bench. And it was like the prime real estate, focal point in the studio. And the first thing she said was the Buddha would have to go. And I'm like, they
Not the right person.
immediately would hate you. Like if you took that Buddha away, everybody in that studio would, it would not be a
Yeah,
good start for you.
for
So,
sure. I think that one important thing that is hard to come to grips with but is the truth is that once they buy your business, it is
Yeah.
no longer yours.
Yeah.
They
So
can do whatever they
yeah.
want with it.
Did you, so when you sold it, did you have, were you already had systems? I want everybody to listen here. When you have systems and you sell your studio, you literally hand it over and go, this is how your business is run. Good luck. Was there
Mhm.
part of it where you're in there to help support for a while or answer? Was there a,
Yeah, it was unique with Justin and Greg, I think, because they already have two studios in
oh,
Manhattan
they already
Beach,
have?
and
Yeah.
a lot of the things that we were doing were already very much in alignment.
Okay.
But yeah, that was essentially it. Here's access to our Google Drive. Like the team actually we pre-closing we created a timeline for 2 weeks, so there's 2 weeks of training
Okay.
where we went over everything from how I do payroll, which of course they have their own business in Manhattan Beach, so that I believe has already changed, introducing them to the different departments, and then from there I honestly like they just met with the team themselves instead of me because
Yeah. Yeah.
everything was
Yeah.
already set up and the team was great, super supportive. But yeah, they honestly didn't really need me that much. I think we met 3 or 4 times very briefly, and then that was it.
I stayed involved way too long.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
How long?
Just probably a year.
That's
Yeah.
a very long
It
time.
was a long time. What I didn't know then, I didn't know.
Yeah,
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 I wasn't a business coach then. I was just the same thing.
for
I was a
sure.
yoga teacher that opened a yoga studio and scrappily found my way. And what I didn't know then was that prior to me having a coach, I didn't know I had something of worth. And I think a lot of us passion people go into it serve and then we go, oh, it's a business.
Totally. Eventually, you can start something with passion, of course, and
Yeah.
wanting to help people. Eventually, it has to become a business in order for you to continue to serve
Yeah.
people.
But I think even in the past, since I sold the studio, I think our industry has changed. When I was selling, there wasn't all the knowledge and the automations we have now and the knowledge we have on stats and things like that. It was a different time. And so we have all those amazing tools now. So you've chosen these amazing people to buy your studio. You've gone through that process. What's next for Jill?
Ooh, so I have been, even during the studio, I was dabbling in real estate, both investing and as an agent. So at the beginning of this year, I dove headfirst, and now I am just full time in real estate and flipping a house right now, working with a few buyer clients. And yeah, it's been fast. Like everything has
Yeah.
been moving so fast, and I absolutely love it. I feel like with real estate, there is no ceiling. So I feel like there's a lot of room for me to grow in this space. And ultimately, oh, and another thing that I'm doing is I'm actually teaching entrepreneurship classes at a local nonprofit called Women's Economic Ventures.
Oh,
Yeah,
congratulations. Is that the one that
thank you.
supported you on your opening?
Yes.
Yeah. So now you're
They've full circle, baby.
full circle because we spoke about it that on the podcast, I believe, on the first one.
Yes.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah. And so I'll be doing that for hopefully as long as I can, just because it's really my passion to
Yeah.
help entrepreneurs. And I don't have the capacity that you do, Michael, to start my own yoga business consulting company. So this is like for me the next best step. So still
Oh,
get to help people. And then my ultimate longer term plan is to become a venture capitalist and specifically invest in women owned businesses, support LGBTQ, BIPOC, and environmental companies and founders.
you just put that out there, and I 100% think that you will be able to make that goals. It's so
Yeah.
important. And I usually end my podcast. What are your business tools? They might have changed now. What's your go-to business app or tool that you use a lot now?
As of right now, as far as software goes, I'm rebuilding my social media, and automation is very key. It's been a long time. Before the yoga studio, I was primarily working only in marketing. It's been difficult to get back into the execution part. I'm definitely missing our marketing manager at SoulSeek, but
Because it's all about it's you now, right?
it's just me
You're
right
selling
now.
now. And
Yeah.
it's different than a product or a studio or
Totally.
yeah.
Yes. So I'm just starting from zero again, rebuilding the automations, rebuilding the systems, and text messaging has been my greatest tool because in real estate, it's
Yeah,
all
yeah.
about connections and just letting people know what I'm up to and getting updates, life updates on what other people are up to, which is so fun, so
Uh,
exciting.
and personal app website that you go to now?
Personal website, the MLS for
The
real estate.
MLS.
Yeah. It's so fun. I just love it. I love seeing what's coming, what's on the market. And yeah, totally different than the yoga studio life. But
But are you still okay? So teaching, is that done for you, or because are you still doing teacher training? Are you
yeah, after I sold my studio, actually, I wanted to finish the teacher training that we were just about to start. So from September to December, I still managed and taught some of the yoga teacher training, which was
okay?
the perfect transition for me. It
Right.
was like
Yeah,
a
yeah,
slow out and
yeah. You're
still
still
got
there
to
a
be in
little
the
bit. Still,
space.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, I have not taught a class in a few months. I definitely would like to continue to sub at SoulSeek, and it's funny, my personal practice is actually way more consistent than it
Yeah,
has been in the
yeah,
last 5 or 6 years.
yeah.
So it feels really good to be back into practicing yoga for me and
Or
just me
yeah, because when
instead
you
of
teach,
as part of my business.
yeah, and when you teach also, I found I was using a lot of one side of my body.
Oh my
I
gosh,
was so
absolutely.
messed up.
Right side only.
Yeah. Let me demo on this side and then walk around the room.
Right, totally.
Jill, I'm so happy to always have this connection with you. I think you're an amazing person. I think you're super inspiring to young women out there that anything is possible if you put your mind to it. And I just adore you.
Oh, thank you, Michael. I love you so much. You're amazing. And thank you for helping people like me and other yoga studio business owners. I think that, like we were talking about earlier, it can be such a challenge. It's a great challenge, but
Mm.
it is so valuable to have someone who is your champion. And oh, I'm
Jill,
happy I was able to
you
sneak that in there.
definitely know that you've got a marketing background. Thank you.
Oh yeah, but
Well,
no, you're awesome, and
thank,
I just
that'll be my
think
next
so
reel,
highly of
Jill.
you. Nice. Love it.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you so much.
Good luck with all your real estate ventures.
Thank you so much, and just sending all of my love to all of the yoga studio owners out there. You got this.
You got this for sure. That's a wrap on another episode here at Yoga Biz Champ, your go-to sanctuary for turning yoga passion into a thriving business. If today's stories and strategies sparked that fire in you, imagine what we can achieve together. Don't let this be our last encounter. Please hit subscribe, follow us on your favorite platform, and leave us a glowing review. Ready to unfold the mat on your dream studio? Whether you're sketching plans for your very first space or you're set to elevate an existing studio, I've got your back. Head over to yogabizchamp.com now to book your free, no strings attached meeting, and let's explore how my starter studio package can cover your opening day costs or how my grower studio package can introduce systems and freedom into your business. Your yoga studio dream doesn't have to be just a dream. I'm Michael J., your Yoga Biz Champ, and I'm here to journey with you from blueprint to bliss. Because when you thrive, we all do. See you next time.